I have a drawer in my kitchen. Had, actually. For 30 years, it was full of things I couldn't name without opening it. Batteries that might be dead. A key to a lock I no longer own. 3 pens, none of them working. A cable for a phone I threw away in 2011. I grew up in Osaka. My grandmother never had a drawer like that. Not a single one. So what happened to me? Let me tell you something. The cleaning industry doesn't want you to figure out. You don't need more storage boxes. You don't need better organizers. You don't need another shelf. You need less. And that's a problem for them because less doesn't make them money. The Japanese have known this for centuries. And somehow, in the process of moving overseas, building a Western life, raising children in a Western house, I completely forgot it. I forgot everything my grandmother showed me without ever saying a word. I'm Keiko Nakamura. I'm 72 years old. And for almost 40 years, I lived in a house that would have made my grandmother quietly, politely heartbroken. I moved from Osaka in my late 20s, England first, then Canada. I was so focused on arriving, on building a career, a family, a life, that I stopped paying attention to the space around me. And it happened slowly. A spare room that became a storage room. A garage we couldn't park the car in anymore. Cupboards that required a strategy to open safely. I told myself it was normal. Everyone around me lived the same way. And that's the trap, isn't it? When everyone is doing something, it stops looking like a problem. It just looks like life. By the time I was in my late 50s, my house felt heavy. Not physically, I mean the air in it felt heavy. I'd walk into certain rooms and feel tired before I'd done anything. I'd open a cupboard and close it immediately because I couldn't face what was inside. I had boxes in the basement I hadn't opened in a decade, and yet I was keeping them, just in case. It wasn't until I was 62 that something cracked open in me. I went back to Osaka to visit family. My aunt, she was 80 at the time, lived alone in a small apartment. When I walked in, I stood in the doorway for a moment, just looking. There was almost nothing there. A low table, 1 plant, 2 cups on a shelf, light coming through clean windows. And I felt something that embarrassed me at first. I felt jealous of a small apartment, of emptiness. That was the beginning. Here's what I should have remembered from childhood and didn't. The Japanese don't throw things away because they're cold or because they don't care about memories. They throw things away regularly, deliberately, almost ritually, because they understand something about the relationship between outer space and inner state that most of the Western world has been successfully distracted from understanding. Your environment is not just around you, it is inside you. Every object you keep that has no real function, no real love attached to it, is an open file in your mind, a conversation you haven't finished, a decision you've been avoiding. Psychologists now have data on this. Visual clutter elevates cortisol, the stress hormone. It keeps your nervous system in a low-grade state of alert. You don't notice it consciously, but your body feels it. The cleaning industry would rather you buy a better label maker. That's fine for them, but it doesn't solve anything. My grandmother had a practice. Every single day, not once a year, every day, she would look at her home and ask, "Is there anything here that doesn't belong?" Not dramatically, not as a project, just as part of existing consciously in a space, like checking whether a door is locked before you sleep. Small, quiet, constant. The Japanese call a version of this osoji, a deep intentional cleaning, not just surfaces, every corner, every drawer, every decision. And at the end of the year, there's a national practice of this, a collective exhale. The whole country clears out before the new year begins. But my grandmother didn't wait for the end of the year. She did it in small pieces every morning. There's also a concept I want you to sit with, ma. It's nearly untranslatable. It means space, but not just physical space. It means the meaningful pause between things, the silence between notes in music, the empty wall in a room that lets your eyes rest. Ma is not absence. Ma is what gives everything else meaning. When I fill every wall, every shelf, every drawer, I destroy the ma. And when there is no ma in my home, there is no ma in my mind, no pause, no breath, no space for anything new to arrive. I want to tell you about something I wrote. After my visit to Osaka, after what happened when I came back home and started slowly, painfully, going through 40 years of accumulated life, I started writing things down. not as a plan, just trying to understand what I was feeling as I did it. Why letting go of a mug hurt. Why I stood in front of a box of my children's old drawings for an hour and couldn't decide. Why some days I felt relief so sharp it was almost like grief running backwards. It turned into a book, a small one, called The Empty Shelf, because that first shelf I cleared in my home, really cleared, became the thing I kept coming back to look at. It was almost sacred to me. I wrote it for people like me. People who grew up with one kind of wisdom, lost it somewhere along the way, and are now trying to find their way back. The book is in the pinned comment below this video. It's the most personal thing I've ever put my name on. I've been hearing from readers. Bridget from Melbourne wrote to me last month. She said she read it in 2 days and then went straight to her spare room and didn't stop for 6 hours. James in Arizona told me it was the first time he'd understood why he kept things, not just what to do about them. Maria from Lisbon said she gave a copy to her daughter, and they cleared out the family home together for the first time in years and cried, and it was good crying. It's there in the pinned comment if the time feels right for you. Back to what I was saying. There's a concept in Japan called danshari. 3 characters, 3 ideas. Reject what comes in unnecessarily. Get rid of what's already excessive. Separate yourself from attachment. It's not decoration philosophy. It's closer to spiritual training. And here's what makes people uncomfortable when they hear this. It's connected to mortality. The Japanese relationship with death is different from the Western one. Death is not something that happens at the end and is therefore best not thought about until absolutely necessary. It's woven into daily life, acknowledged, even honored. And that changes how you hold objects. There's a growing practice among older Japanese of what's called seikatsu no katazuke, life cleaning, going through your possessions while you're healthy and clear-minded so that the people you love don't have to do it for you when you're gone. Not from fear, from love, from wanting to leave light instead of leaving load. My aunt, the one with the beautiful empty apartment, told me she'd done this at 75. I don't want your cousins to stand in my kitchen arguing over a set of plates, she said. I want them to remember dinners, not deal with dishes. I thought about my own basement. I thought about my children inheriting boxes they couldn't identify. That thought moved me more than any organization system ever could. Now here's the part that took me longest to understand, and I think it might be the most important thing in this video. We don't keep things because we need them. We keep things because of what we believe letting go of them means. That jacket from 20 years ago, it's not really a jacket. It's evidence that you were that person, thinner, younger, freer, whoever you were then. Throwing it away feels like admitting something you're not ready to admit. That gift from someone who hurt you, you kept it because throwing it away felt like a statement you weren't ready to make. That collection of books you haven't read, they represent a version of yourself you still believe you might become. The person who has time to read all of them. The person who is learned and disciplined and has quiet afternoons. Keeping the books keeps the hope. I understand this. I had all of these. I was all of these. But here's what my grandmother understood that I had to learn late. You are not your objects. The memory of the person doesn't live in the jacket. It lives in you. The wound from the relationship doesn't heal by keeping the gift. It heals when you're ready, and keeping the object sometimes makes that harder. And those unread books? The one you actually read and actually apply is worth more than 40 on a shelf. In Japan, there's a practice of saying thank you to an object before you release it. Arigatai mano, things I am grateful for. It sounds unusual if you weren't raised with it, but it changes the act completely. You're not throwing something away. You're completing a relationship with it, acknowledging what it gave you, releasing it with intention. When I started doing this, quietly, alone in my home at 62, feeling slightly foolish, and then quickly, not foolish at all, I began to understand why it felt like grieving. Because I was letting go of past selves, completed chapters, old fears dressed up as practical objects. And every time I did it, something loosened in my chest. I want to name something else the cleaning industry will never tell you because it has nothing to sell you. Clutter damages relationships. Have you noticed that arguments in a home rarely start where they're actually about? How many times has a difficult conversation happened in a messy kitchen, surrounded by things that needed to be dealt with, in a house where nobody could quite locate anything? The disorder isn't just visual. It's emotional weather. It saturates the air. When my home started clearing, slowly, not all at once, over months and then years, my marriage changed. Quietly, we were calmer. We had more actual conversations and fewer friction moments over nothing. We could find things. We weren't carrying the ambient stress of a house that felt like it was always demanding something. Order outside creates order inside, and order inside changes how you speak to the people you love. Let me tell you about the digital drawer, because I know most of us have one. 14,000 photos on a phone, and you can't find the one you're looking for. Hundreds of apps, most unused, subscriptions you forgot you had, screenshots of things you were going to get back to, podcasts downloaded in 2020. Messages unread for months. The Japanese, particularly younger generations, are increasingly returning to simpler phones, and it's not nostalgia, it's health. Because they understand that mental clutter operates exactly like physical clutter. Every unused app is an open drawer. Every unread message is an unfinished conversation your brain is quietly keeping track of. The Emma disappears in a life where every pocket of time is filled with digital noise. There's no pause, no breath, no gap where something unexpected, something real might arrive. True luxury right now is not more features. It is fewer obligations. It is a phone you can put down without anxiety. A home you can walk into and exhale. When I cleared out that first room, it took me 2 full days, and I cried 3 times and sat on the floor once and didn't move for 20 minutes. I didn't feel the elation people describe in those quick transformation videos. I felt quiet. And then gradually, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt like I could think. Like there was space inside my head that hadn't been there before. And that night I slept in a way I hadn't slept in a long time. My grandmother never had insomnia. I'd had it for a decade. That was not a coincidence. There's a famous Japanese image, the cherry blossom. 1 week of flowers, then gone. And the Japanese don't mourn the ending. They love it because it ends. The brevity is the beauty. Holding on would ruin it. Or kintsugi, the art of repairing broken pottery with gold so the crack is visible, honored, made beautiful, not hidden, not discarded. Transformed. That is the Japanese relationship with impermanence. Things break. Things end. Things are released. And none of it needs to be catastrophic because nothing was supposed to be permanent anyway. When I finally understood this, not intellectually, but in my body, in the way I now walk through my home, everything became easier. You may have a drawer like the one I described at the beginning. You may have a room, or a garage, or a phone, or a mind full of thoughts that have been circulating since 2015. I'm not telling you to throw everything away tomorrow. I didn't. I took months. I still occasionally find a corner I've been avoiding, but I want you to ask yourself one honest question today. Is there something you're keeping that you know, quietly, doesn't belong in your life anymore? Not because someone said so, not because of a rule, but because when you look at it, you feel something heavier than affection, something more like obligation, like guilt, like a chapter that ended but you forgot to close the book. That's where you start. The empty shelf doesn't stay empty. That's the thing people fear and the thing that never turns out to be true. When you make real space, something always comes to fill it. But this time, you choose what? For once, you actually choose. The book is in the pinned comment if you want to go deeper into this, especially into the emotional side of letting go, which I think is the part nobody talks about enough. And I'll see you in the next video. There's much more I want to tell you about what my grandmother knew.